There we go. That looks better. Right. Okay. Welcome to our latest webinar on integrating TOK. Today's session will be looking at language and literature group 1 subjects, regardless of whatever language you might be teaching this in. I hope to give you some advice on how to bring TOK into your classrooms and how you can help deliver TOK. So today's webinar will be structured like this. I'll be going through a little bit about what TOK is, a little introduction to TOK. I'll be looking at why it's a problem integrating TOK. I'm going to give some specific tips on doing it. I'm going to refer to some mysterious things called knowledge questions, which is how we frame our TOK discussions. And then you can just switch off and go away whilst I give a little bit of self-promotion at the end, just going through the way in which we support TOK and the integration of the DP. School visits that I love to do, fantastic timing for that right now, and how you can join the site. So a big welcome to the webinar. Webinar should last about 45 minutes, although as always, I've gotten carried away and added more slides than I expected, so it might sort of drag on for an hour or so. Obviously, this is being recorded, so if you need to leave at any point, that's fine. We'll send you a debrief of the webinar with a link to the video recording. I am Michael Dunn. I am the creator of theoryofknowledge.net, which has been going around a decade, more than a decade now. So you have some idea who I am, I hope. Many of you will be using the site. I hope that some of you out there don't know very much about TOK at all. I'd love to have some non-TOK teachers watching this. The intention for this webinar is that it can function as a way for you, either right now, to get an introduction to what TOK actually is, and not necessarily for people who are actually going to be teaching it, or for you as a DP coordinator or a TOK coordinator to pass on this webinar or pass on extracts of this webinar to your non-TOK members of staff. So I'm gonna not make too many assumptions about your knowledge of TOK. I'm gonna try and introduce you to the aims of it, the structure of it. So I hope that you very experienced TOK people won't be too bored by that, but the intention for this is really for non-TOK teachers or for people supporting non-TOK teachers. I hope there'll be lots of questions, there'll be lots of messages about the content. If anything I say doesn't quite make sense, then I'll be happy to hear about that. But it will be better for me if you send messages at the very end, well, after the webinar has finished. You can email me. I will respond to lots of questions in the debrief email that I will send out. Okay, so that will be coming your way as soon as I can produce it and get it out there. Okay, so let's begin with just a quick overview of what TOK is. So this is supposedly the flagship, or a flagship. Can you have a flagship? I don't know. Let's call it the flagship of the diploma program. It's something that I have been doing for quite a while now. I am by training, a history teacher, but I began teaching TOK around 10 years ago, and it's sort of taken over my life. It's just a fantastic course to be involved in. So I hope that sells it in some way. I am not an original TOK teacher. I'm originally a history teacher, but I've gone over to the other side and become a TOK teacher. I just think it's a fantastic course to teach. I think it's a fantastic course to draw on if you are not specifically a TOK teacher. And it's just packed full of fantastic content, fun content, and it helps to make the process of learning just, I think, a great experience for students. So that's why I think we can call it the flagship course of DP. Excuse me, students are asked to consider in TOK where we get our knowledge from, how we produce knowledge, what we do with our knowledge, and I'll be looking at that a little bit more as the webinar progresses. The TOK course is assessed not by an exam, which you'll probably be aware of. Instead, students have to write an essay, and now they produce an exhibition, which again I'll talk a little bit more about later on. But excuse me, that basically involves them choosing some objects, linking it to an internal assessment prompt, and then explaining how this kind of links to TOK ideas and how TOK manifests itself in the real world, which is something that I will refer to again. And TOK for us in the DP tries to bring all the different strands of the program together by asking students to think critically about their TOK courses. So it's the thing that all courses should have in common, asking questions about how we know that. I also think, and this is what I try to do with my own resources, I think TOK excuse me, aligns really, really well with the 4 C's that have become a bit of a cliche maybe in education, but I think they're great. I think they're valid. So the 4 C's are critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity. And I think all 4 of those things happen more in TOK than in any other course that the students do, which again is why I think we can call it the flagship course of the DP. Okay, so the course itself looks like this. I mean, unlike other DP subjects, it's not as rigid. You're not ticking off different elements that you then get exam questions on. But there are things that we have to look at. We look at these 5 areas of knowledge that you can see listed there. Excuse me. All students should develop knowledge of at least 2 of the optional themes, although personally I think we should be touching on all 5 of those things as well. And then in the middle, we have this thing called the core theme, knowledge and the knower, which is really how we personally respond to knowledge and how we process knowledge and how we kind of bring all these different elements of the course together to make sense of the world. So that's what the course looks like. Now, I referred to this idea of integration as being a problem. It's certainly something that is a perennial question at IB conferences. People are always saying, how do you do it in your school? How do you integrate TOK with the rest of the DP? What does it mean? What does integration even mean? Excuse me. What role should TOK coordinators have? What role should ordinary DP teachers play? I think one of the difficulties is we are so pushed for time, all of us teachers. It's finding timetable spaces to be able to actually do it properly, joint planning, finding the resources, and also, what is TOK? What is TOK anyway? What is it in the beginning? Because this is an extra responsibility for students, for teachers to actually have to deal with. I think, excuse me, the traditional way in which TOK is taught, excuse me, I've got a little bit of a cough today. Okay, so excuse me. The traditional way of teaching TOK, which is to go through the different elements of it, if we just rewind. So spend time on the arts, spend time on history, spend time on human sciences, etc., actually shuts most DP teachers out of the TOK course. As a mathematics teacher, how do I get involved during those 3 or 4 weeks when history is being covered? As a biology teacher, how do I get involved when religion is being discussed for 3 or 4 weeks? So I have developed a different way of delivering TOK via big questions, which form the unit titles for TOK. Excuse me. And this allows any DP teacher to get involved in the course at any point in the school year. So let me show you what that looks like. These are our original big questions. Okay, so these are the questions that we in TOK discuss. Now, these are the ones that members of the theoryofknowledge.net site perhaps use. Some of them I know adapt these and change them a little bit, but the idea, the fundamental idea is that you have units in TOK that allow access to non-DP non-TOK teachers. Excuse me. So I won't read these out, but you can see them for yourself, what the big questions look like. And we study those directly in TOK. We explore these directly. And it involves looking at a variety of areas of knowledge and the different themes all at the same time rather than doing them discretely. So what we do with these big questions, for every DP subject, for every group, we just convert those questions into the relevant subject. So for language and literature, we have this. And again, I don't need to read it out. You can see it for yourself. How do we create new knowledge about language and literature? How do our perspectives and biases shape our knowledge of language and literature, et cetera, et cetera. So suddenly we have a course that at any point, language and literature, teachers can get involved in and can respond to and can help their students with. Okay, so that's how we have the course set up. Now, you don't have to follow those unit titles. Your TOK coordinator might not do it that way. Your DP coordinator might not do it that way. But I think the idea is to have unit titles that grant access to any teacher, and hopefully in your school you have it set up in that way. So that's one of the assumptions that I have today, that you are able to enter the course at any point. But rather than giving sort of general pieces of advice on integrating TOK, I'd like to give some specific things that you can take away today. So, I mean, just a reminder of why we're trying to do this, why bother integrating. I think it enriches every single course, certainly as a history teacher. I mean, I didn't know this at the time before I started teaching TOK, but I was already drawing on a lot of TOK without making it explicit. But the more you do it, the more I think it enriches your subject in all subjects. There's no exception to this. I think drawing on TOK ideas makes your subject more interesting. It encourages more discussion amongst students. It empowers them more because they are questioning the knowledge behind what you are teaching them. And it gives them the idea that they can sort of go off track and not just necessarily rigidly follow a syllabus, but think about, consider all of the knowledge behind the syllabus and challenge sometimes the assumptions that we have that some courses are built on. Again, I think it helps you to tap into the 4 C's. Obviously, critical thinking, TOK is all about critical thinking, but it's about a lot more than that. Excuse me. It's about communicating your ideas clearly. It's about creativity, by which I mean thinking of new ways of conceiving of ideas, of knowledge, of concepts. And it's about collaboration. Again, that can mean several things. I think that means, for a start, working with your peers, working with other people, but also accepting the idea that there are many radically different ways of approaching knowledge and producing ideas. So I think TOK does that fantastically, and I think, you know, promoting those 4 things in any subject will also help. Okay, so as I've said there in my final bullet point, that's all sounds wonderful, but how do you actually do this? So I'm going to try and give you some specific ideas, specific ways to integrate this particular group with TOK. So first of all, this is a new element of the Theory of Knowledge course. The IB have introduced 12 key concepts. Oh dear, this is most annoying. Excuse me. Okay, so if I can get my words across despite my cough. It's not coronavirus. The 12 key concepts of TOK is a new aspect of the course that have been identified as being particularly significant, that students should all be aware of. And I think this is a fantastic opportunity for us, because it gives us a great entry point or access point into TOK for other DP teachers. You know, all of these words can be explained in the context of other DP subjects, and you know, and certainly should be. I mean, I obviously these words can be interpreted in a lot of different ways. They are all very much context. They all rely on the context in which they look at. For example, you know, the type of evidence that we might look at will vary massively from one subject to another. Excuse me. The type of explanation we offer to produce knowledge will obviously differ. The process we go through will differ. And yes, the way we interpret things will change, according to the DP subject that you're looking at. So, what does that mean for us in language and literature? Well, here are three examples that, maybe we can consider. Responsibility. Okay, we're dealing with language here, we're dealing with literature here. There's a lovely Navajo proverb at the top. I think I might be getting that in the way. So be careful when speaking, you create the world around you with your words. I think that's a fantastic idea. Also, I think relates to power. But when we use words, we have to be very careful about them, because we create meaning, we create truths. So I think we have a responsibility to use our words very, very carefully. Certainly at the moment, I think that's quite relevant. And values, a fantastic quote from D.H. Lawrence there: the essential function of art is moral, which for some students, maybe you can just cut it off there and give them that very short prompt. He goes into a little more detail there, but a passionate, implicit morality, not didactic, a morality which changes the blood rather than the mind, which is, I think, a great quote to link language and literature to morality and to values. There's a great article here. You can have a look. I'll be sending this presentation out afterwards. You can follow this article, but this is a lovely little article by the BBC about how in every society, in every culture, storytelling plays a central role in helping us to make sense of the world via fictional tales. Is this a valid way of explaining what's going on, or because it's fictional, does that undermine it? Again, a great sort of point for discussion. So those are just three very quick examples of how we can use the key concepts of TOK to link these two aspects of the DP. As I will say at the end, we offer support on all of the 12 key concepts. We offer some more media sources, we offer more quotes, and we can help you to sort of enter into TOK via these 12 key concepts. So that's one way we can do it. Another way would be to use key thinkers. There are a lot of fantastic people out there who are writers or have offered thoughts on writing, which are who are great people in order to bridge the gap between language and literature and TOK. Here are four examples. We've got Elif Shafak, who is a fantastic Turkish writer. She's got an amazing TED talk here about the point of fiction, and she talks about how it helps us to break through kind of the mental barriers that separate us from other people. It's just a wonderful, beautiful TED talk, which I highly recommend. Is this why we have literature? Should this be the reason, the ultimate reason why we study literature, in order to understand this process of kind of bonding with other minds and other people? It's a great talk to have a look at. William Shakespeare, a bit obvious perhaps, but not just him, but any writer who has written sort of hundreds of years before. Can we gain a sort of an eternal guide to moral issues by looking at literature? Excuse me again, sorry about this. Is this what makes literature great? The idea that it somehow provides us with an eternal guide to morality. Does this work with other writers? Can we go back even further than that and look at Roman and Greek writers, perhaps, who deal with moral issues? But Shakespeare himself is a great one to start with. More modern writer there, Philip Pullman, who discusses the need for using more than just science in order to understand the natural world. Do we need to draw on art and literature in order to do it? So he has many great things to say, many often quite provocative ideas that he promotes. Again, a great thinker to bridge that gap. And then Hilary Mantel, who is currently up for a third Booker Prize with her amazing trilogy about Tudor England, and how she here talks about using her imagination to understand the past. And obviously the DP overlaps massively. We've got a great overlap here with history. Is this a valid way of understanding the past, using our imagination to kind of fill in the gaps that we have? She certainly does it brilliantly well. Other people perhaps not so much, but is this something that we can ever accept as a valid way of gaining the truth about the past? Or because it's been imagined, because it is essentially fictional, should we disregard it? So again, quite a nice point of discussion. She's a brilliant writer and very interesting person to look at. So there are obviously hundreds and hundreds of key thinkers that we can draw on, who deal with TOK related issues within the context of language and literature. These are just a few examples here. Real life situations. So in TOK, and this is what a lot of people perhaps mistake about the course, it seems very abstract. It seems to have a lot of ideas that are not sort of immediately applicable to the real world. The truth is that we try in TOK to apply our concepts, our ideas to the real world as much as we possibly can. Certainly, my approach as a TOK educator is one in which the lessons that I teach, the courses that I design, are driven by real life situations. This is what makes the course interesting for students. This is what makes it relevant for students. And this is what justifies the course itself, that we should be able to apply these ideas to the real world and use it in order to make sense of what we see happening out there, however crazy it might be. So we try and use real life situations, by which we mean news events, issues that are going on in the world, and also, very importantly, the experiences of students inside the school and outside the school, to understand concepts, make sense of concepts. We use these real life situations as a way of providing evidence for our ideas, but also as a way for us to explore questions that need to be looked at. So real life situations, and the more contemporary they are, the better, are very much the staple of the TOK course. Again, I'll just give a very few examples here, just to show the kind of thing I mean. These are things that I've been reading quite recently. I don't know whether you're familiar with the media source Vox. Yeah, I wouldn't call it an unbiased source, but it's a very interesting media source. And they recently had a lovely article about how Camus' novel *The Plague* gives us a great model of what's happening in the world today with the coronavirus pandemic. So is this a valid way of trying to make sense of the world right now by using novels that have been written, quite a few years previously? Can we base our understanding on Camus' ideas, and other people have written on similar themes as well? Again, trying to understand the real world via fiction. There's some new books being written based on the climate crisis. Again, is this a valid way of understanding what's going on, or should we just stick to the facts? Should we just stick to the scientific evidence? Philip Pullman, obviously all these things are interlinked, would definitely have something to say on that. And then there's a third article there. Again, you can follow these links when you get the presentation. The third article there is all about how E.M. Forster, the English novelist, in around 1910, wrote this extraordinary novella, which completely predicts the internet world, which sounds extraordinary, and it is extraordinary. If you have a look at this book he wrote, it's extraordinary in the way in which it predicts the world today. Again, can we truly learn from literature about how society is developing? It's mimesis and anti-mimesis. Is art based on the real world? Is the real world based on art? So this is a really nice example of that. I'll come back to real life situations in a minute, because there is a resource that I offer that I hope will hook you up with real life situations every single month. I'll come back to that shortly. I think I need to, before we sort of go much further, just talk about how we should frame TOK discussions. I don't want it to be too contrived. Personally, I think we should be trying to blend our TOK ideas as much as possible with what we do, rather than perhaps say, right, for the next 10 minutes we're going to do some TOK. I think if you're discussing something, and then maybe afterwards you can sort of say, well, what we've just been doing is very relatable to TOK. How should we frame TOK discussions? So if you're not familiar with the course, Well, first of all, any discussion in which you're challenging students' opinions, when you're challenging their assumptions, when you're saying to them, why do you think that? It is great for us. We like that in TOK. So I wouldn't necessarily worry too much that you're doing it in the right way. If you're encouraging discussion, if you're encouraging debate, that's great. Now, it's worth saying that in TOK, we try to frame our discussions around what we call knowledge questions. And it gets a little more complicated than that because there are, various types of knowledge questions. There are basically two types of knowledge questions. First order knowledge questions, which are about what we know, and second order knowledge questions, which is about how we know what we know. Okay, so in DP subjects, basically you're mostly doing first order knowledge, and in TOK we try to concentrate on second order knowledge. To give a few very quick examples of that, I'm a historian, so a first order knowledge question in history would be, why did the First World War start? A second order knowledge question would be, why do historians have different opinions about why the First World War started? So that the first question is directly about the world and what has happened. The second one is about our knowledge of what happened. In the natural sciences, we might have questions on what Einstein's key theories were in physics. That would be first order knowledge. In a second order knowledge would be something like what were Einstein's thoughts on on the role of imagination in producing scientific knowledge. So those are two very, very quick examples. I'll try and be a little more specific when it comes to language and literature. So what kind of things can you be talking about? Well, here's an example. 1984, George Orwell, he could almost be the patron saint of TOK thinkers, actually. He is just fantastic for just about every single aspect of the course. 1984, of course, a very well-known book. I know it's studied by a lot of schools around the world. It's one of those books that I think every student should be aware of. Certainly, we look at it in TOK. Now, in language and literature, you might be looking at the themes within 1984. You might be looking at the style of language used by George Orwell. You'll be focusing on the characters and the motivations behind them, etc., etc., which is great. In TOK, we wouldn't be doing that. We wouldn't be so interested in George Orwell's style, etc., etc. For us, this book and actually the work of George Orwell in general is just so interesting because our understanding of it and our kind of use of it has changed quite radically over time. And there's a fantastic video here, just a short sort of 4.5 minute video by a guy called Dorian Linsky, and it's great, it's worth watching. And he talks about how the meaning of this book has changed over time and how very different people have interpreted it and used it in completely different ways. So you have quite left-wing very left-wing groups using it as kind of self-aggrandizement, but you also have very right-wing groups using it in the same way, and they both see completely different messages in it, which is just amazing. Okay, so for us in TOK, that might lead us to some very interesting questions about this book, about the work of George Orwell in general. For example, how and why does our understanding of literature change over time? How does it relate to what's going on in society at any moment? I'm not going to mention any names of any world leaders, but you can probably see the subtext there. Excuse me. How do our personal and societal perspectives and biases shape the way we understand literature? So why can you look at that book and see it as a kind of a diatribe against left-wing excess? Why can you do exactly the same thing and see it as a warning against right-wing ideas? We can all interpret it in a different way. We all take the meaning that we want out of this book. Obviously, George Orwell had his own ideas. But we tend to look at not just this book but other books, and we want them to mean something. So why does that happen? That's the kind of thing that we'd be interested in TOK. Also, this is a question that I find very, very interesting: the relationship between the arts and literature and our moral outlooks. What role do the arts play, and literature specifically, in helping us to develop our moral outlooks, our world views? Should we base our kind of should our moral compass be affected by the books we read, by the music we listen to, etc., etc.? How does that work? Why should that work? Or because this is created, this is fictional, should we just ignore that? Should we base our sort of moral ideas and our principles on things that are actually happening in the world? So I think that's a fantastic question to ask. Now, you'll probably notice that these questions are quite closely aligned to the big questions. The big questions can help us to ask any question, really, about how ideas change over time, the relationship between morality and knowledge. The final big question, all about experts. What does it take to be an expert thinker? Why can two experts have two completely different ideas of the same work of literature or of a work of visual art? So there are loads of questions that we can get from the big questions. Maybe on a slightly sort of smaller scale. So that's the kind of thing that we want to get going in TOK. That's the kind of thing that I think would work quite well in language and literature lessons. And I'd love to see as much crossover as possible. I know I'm a real pain probably to other teachers, because I'm constantly encouraging my students to go off and ask questions related to TOK in their other classes, not just in language and literature, but obviously in all of the DP classes. So I'm probably hated throughout the school for encouraging these kind of things, but I will carry on doing it because I like to provoke, I like to challenge. So I hope that there are a lot of people out there that sort of share that idea that we should try and have as much crossover going on, as much integration as possible. Okay, I'm kind of getting to the end of what I wanted to say. I'm obviously very happy to answer any questions if you have anything about any questions, any queries about those specific things that I've said. I know I haven't given many examples, but those are the kind of things that I try and offer support on in the website. Now, the website works, if you're not aware of the website works in kind of two ways. We have a section for members. We've got a free section, and there's plenty of stuff. Even if you're not a member, there's plenty of material on the site for free users, for non-members. Lots and lots of real life situations, lots and lots of quotes, all sort of structured into the big questions. So even if your school doesn't have a membership, you can still use the site. You can still use it to integrate and draw on TOK. So I hope it is useful, and I'm very happy to excuse me, field any questions that you might have about how to use the site and the kind of content that's on it. Talking a little more specifically, so for members, I've also designed a resource called the Integration Tool, which gives a folder for every DP subject, and it has a different sort of document. You've actually seen one of them. You saw the big questions translated into the context of language and literature. So that's a banner that you can put up in your classroom. If you want to go further, I've got loads and loads of quotes that relate to TOK ideas and language and literature. There are loads and loads of media sources as well. Again, all of this is divided into the big questions. I've got some TED Talks as well that worked. I've given one example of the TED Talks, but there's lots more that you can use to get across TOK ideas. I've also got more help for the 12 concepts, other suggestions for how you can build on these concepts in language and literature classes. The other thing that I offer for members, actually there's a free version of this as well. Every month I publish a TOK newsletter, which I personally share with all of the DP staff in my school. The newsletters have for members around 20 different real life situations, so events, issues, things going on in the world today, that relate to all of the different DP subjects. Language and literature obviously appears regularly. So it's the idea that you're hooking your students up with what's going on in the world right now, and you're making it as relevant as you possibly can to the real world. So the newsletter is quite an important way of integrating the different parts of the DP. And I've also just created something which has gotten completely out of hand called the Knowledge Lexicon, which started off with just a few different terms and ideas, but has got now, I think, about 1,000 different terms and ideas. I've divided them into the different parts of the course. So if you're a language and literature teacher, you can access that, and you can have a look at the section maybe for language. That would probably be the most relevant for you. That's one of the optional themes that we saw at the beginning of this webinar. So there's quite a lot of materials for members that you can use to integrate TOK, to draw on TOK, to include it in your planning, and there's also quite a lot of free content as well. So this, yeah, this is bad timing, isn't it? I mean, we're not doing many school visits right now, but I do love to visit schools. I've visited schools all over the world, and one of the key things that I help schools with is integrating the different aspects of the different aspects of the DP with TOK. I think that we're all TOK teachers, and I try to offer more support for staff members who want to draw more on TOK, and I've got loads and loads of strategies for them to use, and loads of suggestions for them. So I am trying to get this up and running. It's not the easiest thing in the world right now. I do have a few visits planned for next year, but if you do want me to visit your school, I'll be very interested in doing that. If you want to get in touch with me, I can also do it online. So I do help some schools quite regularly online. So do get in touch, and I'll be very happy to tell you how that can be organized. And then finally, if you want to join the site, well, you can read all that. I won't bother reading it out. There's just a link there for you to follow and join up. Okay, so we're just about at the end. I can see that there are a few questions. I might try and just have a quick look at these questions and see if there are any to answer very quickly. Otherwise, I will send them out. So I'm going to stop my share for a second. Let's just have a quick look at the chat. So someone's saying, well, the links to these resources will be shared. Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to send out this presentation, so you'll get it quite soon, and you can follow that. Someone has said, please write down your website. That's great. The website's theoryofknowledge.net. What kind of questions are asked in the essay? Can you email some examples? That's a good question. Yeah. That's a good idea. I'll send that out. The new essay questions have just come out in the last couple of days for students they'll be doing their exams next May. I mean, I suggest you ask your DP coordinator or your TOK coordinator. They will be able to hook you up with those titles. I mean, again, that's another way in which I'm really annoying to my fellow teachers. I say to all of my students, go off and ask your maths teacher about that question. Go off and ask your English teacher about that question. So yeah, I think it's great for other teachers to get involved in the writing of the essay. Someone is saying, is there an option for individual membership? I'm afraid not, but membership, I've kept my prices the same for the last few years. I'm not raising them. I know we're all, in a little bit of trouble at the moment, so I'm not planning on raising the prices. They're pretty reasonable. You get a lot for your money. So talk to me if you really want to discuss that. I do sometimes give discounts for schools that are in trouble, so you can talk to me about that if you want. Someone, I think, is sharing some of the questions, which is very helpful. That's great. Yeah, you can see them there. I will send. I think I will send. Actually, I'm probably not allowed to do that copyright wise. In terms of copyright, I don't think I can actually share the questions as they are. But so I suggest that you get in touch with the DP coordinator. Can I explain a new exhibition? This is not really the place to do that. I do have another webinar which you can look at, I think for free, that you can look at that. I do give lots of support on the exhibition. There's lots of materials in terms of formative assessment tasks for the exhibition within the members section. And you can also see all the free stuff on the exhibition on the site. So there's quite a lot of help that you can get for the exhibition. I don't really want to discuss that in detail here because this is not really for TOK teachers. Thank you to the person who shared the prescribed titles. That's quite helpful. Just trying to see another question that I can quickly respond to. Can global issues be used as real life situations? Absolutely. I mean, real life situations are anything going on in the world, anything that are real, okay? And that's, in other words, not hypothetical. Students are often tempted to use hypothetical examples. And, you know, I studied philosophy at university for a little while. And one of the most frustrating things I found was hypothetical examples. I just thought that they were so unrealistic and so ridiculous. I wanted real examples, and in TOK, I'm very happy that we use real life examples, real life situations to support what we're saying. So real life situations can be any level. They can be something that has happened to an individual student. They can be something that's happened within the school, something on a local level, a regional level, or, you know, massive global issues. So absolutely, global issues are fantastic for real life situations, definitely. I usually find it difficult to keep my students focused on the knowledge and knower aspects during discussions. I think that's probably one that I can deal with. That sounds like that's a good question, but I think I need a little more thought on that to give you a bit more help on that. Where is the sharing going on? I will send out an email quite soon, sharing all of these things. Someone says, how can I register in your other online webinars? If you go to the site, there is, within the resources section, there is, you'll see webinars. Just go to the webinar and you can just click on the other, any of the other webinars. So as I've said, we've got 6 of these coming up for all of the other groups. By the way, I was asking how I, as a language and literature teacher, can support the needs of the exhibition. I would say, you know, excuse me again, probably your role comes in when the students have, well, yes, when they've chosen their objects. Now, you know, their object could quite easily be a set text that they've had to read. And you could help students to develop that and link it to the TOK course. That what they have to do is link those objects to the IA prompt that they've chosen. There are 35 IA prompts. They choose one of those and they need to link their objects to that prompt. And they've also got to do it within the context of one of the optional themes, which could easily be knowledge and language. So, you know, definitely the language and literature teachers could come in very, very useful there. Someone's saying the chat is all blank. I'm so sorry about that. I'm seeing it. I will send out responses to some of these things when I can after the end of this webinar. When we do lit text, can the fictional situation, right? That's a really good question. I might sort of try and reinterpret that question. So can fictional text be used as examples in theory of knowledge? In other words, like real life situations? The answer is you've got to be careful about that, because, for example, the situation in which you might find a fictional character and the choices they make would definitely not work for us in TOK, because that's part of the book. That's part of the, you know, that's imagined. However, you know, as I have kind of tried to show you, can we use literature as a guide to our own moral choices? You know, you could do that. Can language and literature help to allow us to understand what's going on in the world? I mean, I'm thinking suddenly I've got the play Copenhagen coming into my head. Could we use that play, for example, to understand quantum physics? Those are the kind of questions. Now, questions in TOK don't have a single answer. They should be, you know, quite discursive and analytical, and it depends on your perspective. So yeah, those are the kind of questions that we're interested in, but you've got to be careful about using language and literature and the arts as real life situations. Someone has just said, will you be offering similar subject specific? I'm afraid I can't do subject specific because it will just take too long, and I haven't got that amount of time, but I will. I'm doing it via the groups, so You know, when we come to say group 3, I'll try and give a few examples of how we can link TOK to history, how we can link it to geography, etc., etc. But I can't really do every single individual. We can't do every individual subject. Someone's just saying the chat is blank. I'm sorry that the chat is blank. All right, so I'm sorry about that. I don't know why that's happening. I will try and send you as much of this as I can so that you can see it in the debrief email. So hopefully you won't lose anything. Okay, I think that's everything. Happy to respond to 1 or 2 more questions if you quickly have them. So yeah, that's quite helpful actually, some of those comments. I don't normally respond to comments as we're going along, but this is quite a good way of doing it. Just trying to see if will the links to these resources be shared? Even the works by H.G. Wells also hint at predicting future. Absolutely, H.G. Wells did that a lot. Yeah, can we use him? And I mean, that's in language and literature, obviously we get quite a lot of dystopian novels. So you know, one of our optional themes is knowledge and technology. You know, you could ask some really interesting questions there. Why do depictions of science and technology, why are they often pessimistic? You know, you can look at films as well. You can look at a lot of novels, Brave New World as well as 1984. You know, why are we often very pessimistic about the future? Which is a good question. Will you be writing a book on George Orwell as I should do that, definitely, yeah. I am a big fan of George Orwell. Okay, I think we will end it there. Thank you very much for these questions. I will be in touch with the debrief email. I'll send you that. That will have responses to a lot of these questions, and please send me more. Please email me more questions. I'll be very happy to respond to more. I'm sorry about my voice. I'm sorry about my cough. I seem to have recovered, so that's good news. And yes, you'll have this presentation, the presentation you're looking at, and you'll have the video recording as well. So thank you very, very much for joining us. I hope this was helpful, and I'll be in touch very soon. I hope you can join us for our other webinars, and I hope this is useful for your non-TOK teachers, and hope it persuades them that this is not a terrible course, and we can all be involved in it. Thank you very much. Thanks for all your thank yous, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.